Spotlights are commonly used when the artist or DP requires a narrow, sharper, or more directed beam of light, and are often used in the real world in situations from film and photography through to live stage lighting and even miniature prop sets, creating a variety of realistic and stylistic looks. A spotlight can be art directed even further with the use of barn doors, which can be opened and closed to either block out areas of light or refine the shape of the light further. Spotlights are also commonly used with gobos to project false shadows into a scene or onto a character. So in this first lesson on creating spotlights in Solaris, we're going to take a look at the basic settings we have access to within Solaris. So with that, let's dive in and let's have a look. So here we have our trusty Reflectron robot, and to save a bit of time, I've already jumped ahead and I created this spotlight. And the way I did that was I dropped in a light and then I changed the type to disk. And everything else is set to its current defaults. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change this intensity. So I'm going to put 3 into the intensity and I want to put 3 into the exposure. And now we get a bit more light. Now, it doesn't really look like a spotlight. We don't really have that nice narrow beam of light. So in this first lesson, we're just going to have a look under the shaping tab within the light parameters. So if you come to the shaping tab here, you'll see this option called spotlight. So if we turn that on, we don't really see anything that's happened. And that's because at the minute, this angle is set to 90. So it hasn't really closed any of the barn doors. It's still spreading light out at 90 degrees. So now let's reduce this angle. So let's say we go down to 50, and then we can start to see here that we're starting to narrow our beam of light. So this is 50 degrees. Let's come down to 20 degrees. And now what we're getting is we're getting something which is more familiar to us as a spotlight. Now the next thing we can do is we can soften the fall off between the light and the shadow. And this comes under this softness tab. So if I add 0.1 into here, now what we're starting to get is we're starting to get a nice soft fall off between our light and our shadow. And let's just come back to the base properties and let's just increase our exposure to something like 5. Now we're getting a much brighter light. And then again, if we come back to the angle, take this down to 10, we're getting much more of a kind of focused, narrow beam of round light. So one thing I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson is over here back in the base properties, and this is the radius. So if we want to make our spotlight smaller, let's say we take it down to 0.2, we know that now because the light has got smaller, it's actually emitting less light. And again, if you haven't watched the normalized power lesson, I suggest you go back because it'll explain to you why now we have less light and why we probably actually now want to press this normalized power. Because when I turn it on, you'll see that we've now gone back to emitting the same amount of light, yet we've retained the size of the light that we want. And you can see here that the robot's shadows are starting to get much, much sharper. If we go down to say 0.1, we're getting these nice sharp shadows. And if I turn off normalized power, you can see again that we lose this intensity of the light. So let's turn that back on again. And so the last thing I want to show you in this lesson is under this focus tab. So what this allows you to do when you click it on is it allows you to add extra refinement to the beam of the light. And if I just type 1 here, and just to demonstrate it, I'm going to add a color to the focus tint. And actually we don't see much, so let's keep going higher. Let's go to 5. We've now started to tint the edge of our spotlight. And I go even higher with something like 10. And then let's take this up to 20 to really start to push this effect. Now you can start to see that we have an orange here on the outside of our spotlight, whereas in the middle and the center of our spotlight focus, we're actually reverting back to the light color. And let's just go up to 30 just to really push this effect. And just pushing it one step further, let's go to 60 to really show you. And of course we can change this color, and I'm sure there are some really cool CG music videos that you can start to use this for, but it really helps you sort of pinpoint the light. You can see here that in the middle of his arm, we're not getting the blue. And as we start to fall off to the edge of our spotlight, this is where we're starting to tint in blue. And again, you can see there's no blue here. And as we gradiate out to the edges, we're starting to get this blue. So this is just a small introduction to using the basic features of the spotlight within Solaris. But in the next lesson, we're really going to power up our spotlights by coupling them with the amazing Pixar barn door light filter. And that's really going to allow us to craft and home and direct our spotlights.